Little bears chasing the birds. The peeper frogs are just starting to pick up. They're all out here in this tree line and down by the pond. Can you hear them? I'm sharing my fall spring with you because I know some of you are out there freezing your tail off in ice storms and stuff. We've got to move the chickens tonight. We have to lock them up once they go into the coop for the night and put them on new ground because it's very muddy where they are. So I wanted to get the eggs while they were still clean. And of course I didn't bring anything to put them in. But I have something right here that I'm super excited about. I want to share with you guys. We're gonna open it out here. So I keep the weather open still. On my weather app, I have where I actually live, and then I have where I used to live, and I have some of my favorite places that I like to go all listed. Just a strange thing that I like to do. Keep up with the weather for multiple places. And this morning, whenever I woke up, it's like icing and very, very cold, very freezing in Arkansas where I used to live. And the high here today was, well, I actually won't tell you because I don't want to come off as if I'm rubbing it in. I'm not. But I'm feeling for you, and that's why I'm sharing my fall spring sounds. It's gonna freeze here again. It's just pretending right now like it's not going to. All right, so just opened this envelope, and I'm super excited to share with you why I'm getting this mail from Wild Boar Farms. So first, we have to have a little story time. We're gonna go over here for the story time, the place where the tomatoes will grow. Here we put these 3 long beds in. Of course, I planted some brassicas in them that got deeply damaged whenever the weather got really cold. See, we had cold weather. I have a nice day today, but we did get really cold weather, a hard freeze. I've got some kale. These are some collards, but several of them were damaged so badly that they didn't pull through. But my plan is here in these 3 long beds, these are 48 feet, I believe, to put long cattle panel trellises and plant 3 long rows of tomatoes right here. This won't be all of the tomatoes I plant, but this will be like the most concentrated place of tomatoes. And I'll probably put some in the no-dig bed up there. I'm gonna test the soil in the high tunnel to see where it's at because we've kind of gotten some contaminated soil up there. I don't really want to put any more tomato plants in there blindly because I feel kind of like that's like the Hunger Games for nightshades with that contamination. May the odds be ever in your favor. I want the odds to be very much in my tomatoes' favor, so I don't think I'm gonna put them in there. But I probably will have some more tomatoes over here because while 3 long rows of tomatoes is a lot, I have a lot of tomatoes I want to grow. So I'll probably put a few more rows in these beds, which are about 24 feet long each. So here's the story. Many moons ago, I desperately wanted to be a gardener. My mom was a grower of many things. She largely did ornamentals. She did some food stuff, but she did lots of roses and different irises and different things like that. And so I grew up around gardening, and my mom had a lot of houseplants. She would always go check out those shelves at the box stores where they put the plants that are just nearly dead. And I think it was like a personal goal for her to see, one, what cool plants she could get for a bargain, because those things are usually like $1 because they're nearly dead. And 2, it was like a test of her gardening prowess to see if she could bring them back to life. Anyway, I could take perfectly healthy plants and then kill them entirely. And I had a really hard time early on with gardening, just because I had a really hard time with the attention aspect and paying attention. Obviously now I'm doing fine. It's going very well. But it was rough at the beginning, and I had really convinced myself that I couldn't grow anything. And I remember making some efforts, failing. And I want to say it was probably around 2008 or 9, somewhere in that region, because Asher was a baby at the time, and he's about to be 16. I was reading a book by Barbara Kingsolver called Animal Vegetable Miracle. I'll put a link to it down below if you're looking for something good to read or get it on audiobook Fantastic book. I think everybody should read it. It's one of my favorite books, and I reread it pretty regularly. I was at this part of this book where she was talking about growing heirlooms, and the premise of the book is that her family moved from like the desert in Arizona, I believe, to Appalachia, and made a challenge for themselves to eat only locally for a year. It's fantastic read, and they talk all about different things that kind of go into the benefit of that, and they share their experience. But she was talking about her garden, and she talked about the pages of the heirloom seed catalog, and I remember this moment so vividly. It was a marking moment. Have you ever had those marking moments? Like, I remember the first time I laid eyes on my husband. Didn't even talk to him that night, but I remember what shirt he was wearing. I walked in and I saw him at a friend's house. I knew he was the brother of some friends of mine. I did not feel any sort of romantic interest towards him. I wasn't even thinking like that, but I still remember, for whatever reason, like somewhere in the depths of me, that sparked as an important moment. And now, obviously, I can go, oh, I remember the first time I saw my husband. But have you ever had those like marking moments? This moment that I read this thing in this book and what I did subsequently, like, was a marking moment for me. She was talking about how she looks at seed catalogs the way some women look at like Tiffany's catalogs, or that people would look at jewelry, women would look at jewelry. And that she, romanticized it, and how wooing it was to her. That wasn't her word, that's my word, but like, it marked me, and I thought, I think I'm going at this garden thing all wrong. I think I'm trying to do this because I want to be a gardener and I want to have success at it, but I'm not driven that way, and I don't always do well that way. And I read this book and I thought, this is it for me. And I went and I ordered my first heirloom seed catalog right then, 2008. The rest is history. 10 years later, in 2018, I was flying out to Baker Creek to speak at their seed expo. 10 years later. My YouTube channel had just started taking off. They kind of took a chance on me as like a new voice in the gardening sphere, and invited me out. It was early on in doing this. And it was funny because I was rereading Barbara Kingsolver's book on the airplane out to Baker Creek, and crying, obviously. Like, I guess it was just very serendipitous and beautiful, and it just evoked a great deal of gratitude in me, and just realizing how far that had come. Anyway, when I ordered that first heirloom seed catalog, I believe it was Baker Creek's catalog, I ended up ordering some seeds, and one of the first unusual tomato varieties that I ordered was from Brad Gates at Wild Boar Farms. I think it was the large barred boar. It was one of his earlier varieties to release on a larger scale. I grew it in a pot in front of my suburban house, and it's the first tomato that I ever grew from seed. I had grown before from like plants. I'd grown cherry tomatoes, but a variety that I saw in a seed catalog, and I went, oh, this is fascinating. If I don't grow this, I'll never will. And it was like the first tomato I ever grew was Brad Gates tomato. So naturally, I became a big fan, and followed Brad's work. What he did was develop all of these new tomato varieties. It's what taught me the difference between like heirlooms and hybrids. Because of course, all of these new varieties that Brad has been developing over the last, couple of decades or whatever, they're not heirlooms because they're not handed down. Now, once my kids grow up and are growing them, and then their kids grow up and are growing them, they would be called heirlooms at that point. They're open pollinated hybrids, meaning that you can save the seeds and have a reproduced plant like the parent plant. So they're sustainable in that sense and what people want heirlooms for, but they're recently developed. Hybrids are not bad. They're just crosses. It's the reason we don't love hybrids is when they have been crossed for shelf stability or shippability or different things that make them not great tomatoes to grow. They don't taste good, and they don't produce as well. And if you go to save seeds from them, there's no guarantee that it's going to grow very well at all, which is why we want open pollinated hybrids. But the hybrid part, it's not the bad part. I digress. In 2018, when I went out to the expo, Brad was there, and I'm gonna get embarrassed telling this story, but I'm gonna tell you anyway, because really this channel is about entertaining you, not about making me feel good. But I met Brad and I fangirled. I actually blushed, cried, giggled, completely lost it. Jeremiah still, to this day, loves to give me a really hard time about the fact that of all the people that I've met in my life, where I've met, you know, public figures and celebrities, and the person that I fangirled over was a tomato grower from California. But he's an amazing guy. The following year, met up with him again at the Baker Creek Expo and did a video, which I will link down below. Really great conversation. He's got so much knowledge when it comes to growing. Actually, I was talking to him on the phone the other day, arranging what I'm about to tell you about. And he just throws out these tips that I'm like, what? That's so cool. So he was talking about growing in a really hot place or a very sunny place, and how tomatoes can actually, you know, that can be detrimental to getting a lot of fruit off of a tomato, because once you hit like 85 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit, like 26 to 32 Celsius, your tomatoes will drop their blossoms and they don't set any more fruit and they struggle. And he was saying how if you grow your row of tomatoes and then kind of next to it, you grow a sunflower every few feet, you plant a sunflower, that it'll provide like 25% shade coverage for your tomatoes. And then he threw out this tip that if you defoliate the lower part of the sunflower, like take the leaves off to keep it from touching the tomato plants, it will help from any stunting happening, because actually plants, when they touch each other, often send hormone to that part of the plant that's touching and tells it to stop growing there and grow elsewhere. So he's like, so make sure you defoliate the sunflowers where they might come in risk of touching the tomatoes. But just them growing and what leaves you are able to leave will help shade the tomatoes and help them grow better. And I was like, that is so cool. So anyway, now I'm gonna come sit down and open the envelope and tell you about what's in it. Now that you know that this is actually, you know, kind of a big deal to me. So Brad and I have talked about doing this for the last couple of years, but we're both gardeners first and business people second, and so we've kind of just let it slip by the window of opportunity to actually do it. And this year, as I was getting prepared, taking my seed inventory and seeing what I needed, I thought I need to reach out to Brad. Right here in my hand is a collection of 8 different varieties of seeds, all my favorites that I have been growing for years, which is now available through Wild Boar Farm's website at a discount to you, Roots Refuge Favorites collection. And I'm going to go over what varieties they are and tell you all about them. But first I want to tell you why I made sure to arrange this year. So over the winter, my friend Sunflower Steve came out and shared his story about the sunflower that he spent the last nearly 2 decades developing. And it really impressed upon me. Though I love supporting seed businesses, and that's not going to change. I love a seed catalog. I love looking through a seed website. I love ordering seeds, and I'm going to keep sharing that with you. But it really impressed upon me the importance of continuing to support the people who are developing these new things, these wonderful things that we are amazed by and inspired by and excited to grow. It made me think of Brad and how much work he has done to create so many cool new tomato varieties. The heirlooms of tomorrow, truly, that are fascinating and beautiful and delicious. And that is by his work. He has spent all this time out in the fields and doing these crosses and nurturing these things and allowing himself to stay passionate, even though it's really hard work. And I really want to be able to send you guys directly to him to be able to support what he's doing, because when we buy from someone like this, we're supporting a small business, we're supporting somebody's passion, and therefore, you know, financially supporting a person to keep doing the work that we're enjoying. The Roots and Refuge Favorites collection, over these years of me growing Brad's tomatoes, they really have become some of my very favorites, and I'm going to tell you what we've got here. We have 8 varieties, plus he sent me one that will be my first time growing. It's this mini Marzano. This isn't part of the favorite collection. This is just one that I'm trying out that he's been developing. I do believe that's available on his website also. But the collection is going to be, essentially you'll save 20% buying this collection versus buying them individually. We have the blue boar berries, which are the cherry tomatoes that are red with purple shoulders. This has consistently for years been the first tomato to develop in my garden and the last. I mean, it goes, oh, long and hard. It produces more than all of the others. It's the last to succumb to sickness. They taste really, really good. They're interesting looking. Of course, the blue shoulders are caused by anthocyanins. Those are going to develop more where they're getting sunshine. So if you were to grow these under like a shade cloth, you wouldn't get as much purpling. I love them. I always grow them, and people seem to really like them. For no other reason, I always have a few plants in them because I'm just so sure that they're going to produce a lot for me. Next, in the keeping in the vein of the cherries, we have Barry's Crazy Cherry. That is a multiflora variety. It has a really thin yellow skin, and it grows in these really cool clumps and clusters of many fruits. Barry's Crazy Cherry is one that has convinced a lot of people that are not usually tomato eaters to like tomatoes because it has such a mild flavor. It's sweet. It has those super thin skins. You do want to make sure if you are growing yellow tomatoes, I find this in my experience to get out there and pick them before it rains or before you're going to water heavily, because yellow skinned cherry tomatoes seem to split easier, and that is the one complaint I've heard about this and the next variety. But I think that if you know that that's the case and you get out and pick them, it's not an issue. I like them because of how thin their skin is, and that comes with that easily split during a heavy rain thing. But they're super sweet, and I've had a lot of people that say I don't like tomatoes try those in my garden and go, wow, I actually really like this. They're very easy to snack on, very, very prolific. I really like Barry's Crazy Cherry. The next one is Napa Chardonnay. Very similar attributes to Barry's Crazy Cherry. It's really more of like a faint yellow tomato, but it has like this nice sweet flavor and nice thin skins. I really like it. Next is kind of an in-between. I wouldn't quite call it a cherry. They're a little bigger than that. It's called a grape tomato. Some of them come off even a little larger, like saladette sized. Brad's Atomic Grape. I've been growing it for quite a while now, I think since it was first introduced by Brad. And Malia, my daughter, of course she lives with her mom and stepdad in Vegas, and she visits Jeremiah and I here on the summers and spring break. She's graduating here this year. She's getting into adulthood. But I've grown this in my garden for her every year since she first discovered that she loved it when she was just a little girl. This last year, had a really rough tomato year here out in our first summer in South Carolina. But I had one Brad's Atomic Grape plant that pulled through and produced Malia her tomatoes, and she will go out every day and strip whatever Brad's Atomic Grape tomatoes are ripe. And I always grow a few plants for her. It's a really neat looking tomato. It has a unusual flavor, and I really like it. Hey brother, what's up? You ran. Yeah. You ran fast. I'm talking about tomatoes.
Tomatoes?
Yeah, nice, huh?
Yes.
You can look. All right, on to the bigger tomatoes. So we had 3 actual cherries, and then one that's the grape that's a little bit larger. And then we have 4 slicers, which we have the Blue Beauty and the Black Beauty. These 2 are the ones that I actually will eat. Some of them, they're delicious. But I like to save them to give to people in the summer, because for people that don't garden and don't hang out with a lot of people that garden, it's a wow factor. It's a garden flex for sure. You gonna join me? All right, cool. The Blue Beauty is the more of the red shows through on that one, and it has the anthocyanin coloring. It's more bluish. I mean, truly, it's not quite as dark of a purple, and it's very, very beautiful. And then the Black Beauty can, of course, there are times, it depends on how much sunshine it's getting. There are times that you're going to see more of the You're going to run around? Okay. There are times you're going to see more of the pinkish red, but if it's getting sun, I mean, I'm talking those things can be almost solid black looking, and they are really cool to get to share with people, because truly it's one of those things that you're not going to get these if you're not growing them. You're not going to see these in a grocery store. You're probably not even going to see them in a farmer's market, simply because, people are not necessarily looking for something that people are going to be weirded out by. Because a lot of people are like, where's just the red tomatoes? And some of us have other priorities. So Black Beauty and Blue Beauty, some of my favorites just for the fun of them, but they're also really delicious also. They have great flavor. Next, the large barred boar, my first tomato. I gotta stick with it. I've had it in my garden every year since that first year that I tried unusual varieties, heirlooms and open pollinated hybrids, and truly fell in love with gardening. And then next, pink Berkeley tie-dye, which I think was probably the next one that I grew of Brad's right after the large barred boar. And it's very similar, whereas the large barred boar is like red and green streaked. The pink Berkeley tie-dye has more of like a pink color, but they're both so delicious. They grow nice large slicers that are just absolutely stunning to look at. And all of these varieties have done very well for me. So those are my favorites. I'm gonna put a link down below. If you go to the website and type it in, you're not gonna find it. You're gonna have to go through this link. And I'm not sure what the number is that we are doing on these, how limited they're going to be, so definitely go check that out if it's something that you're interested in. And support a passionate person, because that's what we have to do if we want people to keep pursuing their passions. We have to get behind them. And I am super glad to be getting behind Brad Gates. I'll also put a link to that conversation that he and I had, and I might go listen to it again myself. I haven't listened to it in a long time, and so I'm sure there are some little nuggets of wisdom in that as well. I don't think that guy can talk about gardening without dropping little bits of gold and wisdom for those of us to learn from that are interested in learning. I had hoped to maybe start some of these this evening, but it's getting dark faster than I thought it was going to. It feels like spring yet, but it is still indeed winter. I've actually got about 2 weeks. I really need to start my tomato varieties, but I'm just getting so excited. You want to go walk down by the pond?
And can we go down there after the pond?
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, sunset walk with my boy and my dog. I'm gonna put the camera down and go push him on the swing. Try not to break these eggs. God bless you guys. Until next time.